USCFootball.com, I'm Keely Eure here with Shotgun Spratling for instant analysis of USC's Wednesday press conference of Arizona State Week. We got to talk to the defensive side of the ball today. We heard from defensive coordinator Todd Orlando, linebacker Palaie Gaoteote, and safety Isaiah Pola-Mao. Shotgun, I'm going to start with Orlando. We got to talk about his defense and what this offseason was like for him as a defensive coordinator. It was such a unique period of time, a long period of time, and he was asked specifically about that. What does that do for installing his defense? And it was kind of a mixed bag from him. It sounded like he liked the time to install and for people to know their assignments. He said meetings are meetings. But then he also said, there's a sense of urgency once they actually got to practice to make sure the fundamentals were there and making sure that putting it in practice was actually they were able to do that in practice.
Yeah, I mean, he said meetings are meetings, but as far as teaching the defense, that may have helped them, how much time they had this offseason to kind of be able to figure out where everybody needs to be, do all those things. But until you put those practice habits into effect and you start, running to the ball and doing those things, you need to do that as much as you can to instill those habits. So, they had 2 weeks where they really went hard on, physicality and practicing, full speed and doing things like that. So that was their goal as soon as they got into camp and opened up things with full pads and stuff. So it was a little bit different. Obviously, everyone's had a different offseason this year, but Todd Orlando said they were trying to make the best of it basically by installing as much as they could during the meetings over Zoom and everything before the camp open. And then once camp open, let's just go full bore, go full speed all the time so we have an idea of where we're at and try to create those practice habits.
Now, we have talked about it a lot, Todd Orlando's relationship with Palaie Gaoteote. I know Clay Helton has talked about it ad nauseum at this point about how they have a special bond and how Orlando's really pushing him hard. So we actually got to talk to both of them about the relationship, and Orlando alluded to the fact that it was kind of funny that he has to talk about EA with him in the room. What do the two have to say about their bond or how they've bonded so far over this training camp?
Yeah, I think that, Todd Orlando put it back on EA. He said it's the player's decision. He said you can ask a player to excel, but until they're actually doing it, they're running to the ball full speed and they're, doing all the little things. You can only do so much as a coach. You can only tell them to do things until the player really buys in. And he gave EA the credit there. He said he's really, at the end of the day, he's running the ball. He's doing things as hard as he can. And there's a lot of things that are going on behind the scenes that are going into that. And EA said that, that Todd Orlando has been pushing him and, that he's a guy that pushes him hard in practice but he's a straight shooter, tells him how it is and tells him what he needs to get done and expects a lot of him. And that's the case that you need to coach your stars a little bit different. And Todd Orlando said that at one point. And EA is one of those guys that he's pushing hard and trying to get the most out of them. And, eventually you're going to see that. I think you'll see that EA is going to have a big year this year because of the way that Todd Orlando is pushing him.
Now, we have a lot of questions about who's going to play beside EA. We have EA figured out, obviously, and Todd Orlando didn't want to get into the depth chart just yet. That will be released on Friday, I believe, along with USC's team captains. But as we've mentioned before, a lot of people, when talking about either Kanai Mauga or the Raylan Goforth, that battle, people mentioned Kanai's experience, but we got to see a different side from Todd Orlando when talking about Raylan Goforth. It seemed like he really had a soft spot for him.
Yeah, he said that and it comes down to the defense coordinator being his position coach at the same time.
Sure.
But Raylan Goforth has already made an impression on Todd Orlando. You can definitely tell that. He said that Goforth is a pro now. It's the way he approaches the game, and said he had to take a picture earlier this week. He said he went into a meeting room, and Todd Orlando is usually early to meeting rooms. We've seen him on the Zooms. We've had contact with him. He's usually there 5 minutes early. But he said he went in, and Raylan was already there and beat him into the meeting room. He had his playbook out. He had the Arizona 2-deep roster out, and he had his iPad watching ASU cut-ups all on his desk, just getting that extra study in even before the meeting started, be able to be extra prepared so he could ask the right questions during the meeting. So I think that really stood out to Todd Orlando, and those are the type of things that you need to do to take your game to the next level, but also to impress a new coaching staff. If the guy who's making the calls on whether you play or not, if you go to those meetings early and you show that you are fully invested, that's going to bode well for your success and your opportunities going forward. So I think Raylan Goforth is going to have an opportunity to get out on the field. But Todd Orlando said that they'll see how the game goes and how many plays Arizona State is running as to how they kind of split up the reps at that spot beside EA.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what your read is, Shotgun, because obviously we can't see practice, but it sounds like from what we have heard that Raylan is the emerging guy, still young, probably making young mistakes, and Kanai, they really value that veteran experience, the reps that he has, but that injury, that hamstring injury has held him back, so they can't see him as much in practice. How do you see that going? Do you see it as Orlando kind of predicted, or do you have something else in mind?
I think that this is Raylan Goforth's spot to take. I think Kanai's going to get some opportunities as well because of his experience. But I think Raylan Goforth, if he comes out and starts making plays early, like we saw him last fall camp make, and like we saw at St. John Bosco, he's a guy. He's a playmaker. He goes out there and makes plays when he's on the field. So if he continues to do that, and if he does that early in the game on Saturday, I think you're just going to see his playing time continue to build throughout the season.
I got to ask Todd Orlando about Drake Jackson. He's been out most of USC's training camp because of a hamstring injury, and he's an interesting guy just because he's molded his position. He's now an outside linebacker in Todd Orlando's defense. So I asked Todd, how are you balancing the fact of getting him back healthy 100%, but also making sure that he's a key part of your defense? What did he have to say about that? Shotgun, that was called you, Orlando.
He gave the strength and conditioning, the training staff, he gave them a lot of credit for getting Jackson back and ready to go. He's going to be good to go on Saturday. That was the whole plan of action for Drake Jackson, is to not take him, not push him too hard early in camp and have him ready to go. And it'll be interesting to see how he's used in this defense. And, with his different body type now, he was asked another question, about Drake Jackson, the different body type he has this year after losing, basically 35 pounds down from 270. So 25, 35 pounds there. He said 270 was too heavy for him, and that was Todd Orlando. He said, it's a judgment. To me, it's a judgment of strength. And what he meant by that is, are you 270 pounds and you need to be 270 to be strong? Or can you be just as strong at 245 pounds? And you look at a guy, and I immediately thought of Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald's only 280 pounds, but he's strong. He's strong as anything in the NFL. Anybody, any person, anywhere. So he's ridiculous. Just watching him on Sundays is just crazy. That's the thing I watch the most when I watch Rams games. And Drake Jackson's another guy who, even at a slimmer form, I think he can still carry the strength that he needs to have to play that position. And he'll be faster. And that's what Todd Orlando said in today's game, it's about having speed all around. So instead of being 270 and lumbering to the ball, can you be 245, be just as strong, but then be faster to get to the ball when it goes to the outside or when it goes to the other side of the formation? I think that's the key thing with Drake Jackson this season.
We got to ask Todd Orlando about how he's scouting Arizona State. It's a tricky situation just because they lose a lot of talent on the offensive side of the ball with Brandon Ayuk and Benjamin, but also USC doesn't have a full picture of what they're going to get from Jaden Daniels, and then you have a new offensive coordinator on top of that. What do you have to say about that, Shotgun?
Yeah, USC hasn't faced Jaden Daniels. Todd Orlando hasn't faced Jaden Daniels. However, that's going to be the key to stopping Arizona State's offense. Todd Orlando talked about how he can extend plays, he can make all the throws. The same thing Clay Helton has been saying this week about Jaden Daniels. The sophomore quarterback is really good. He doesn't have the same weapons that he had last year. However, he might have a better offensive line. They got in a couple grad transfers as well, including Henry Haddis from Stanford. So I think their offensive line is going to protect them a little bit better. So maybe he makes it through the season without having those injuries that he suffered last year, which caused him to miss that USC game. But, looking at the offense, Todd Orlando also looked at what Zach Hill, the offense coordinator that comes over from Boise State, is doing and has done at Boise State. He said they anticipate a lot of shifts, a lot of motions. He said the offense is going to have 10 to 15 plays that are scripted. They're going to be really, really crisp and really sharp. And then it's going to be, how does the defense adjust after that? How does USC kind of attack them following that? Do you try to bring out some of your unique blitzes early in the game? You try to hold those. That's kind of the fun matchup of offense coordinator, defense coordinator. But they're going to try to, it's hard to simulate the speed at which a team, can do the shifts and the motions and stuff. So I think how quickly USC adjusts to those type things is going to be really key. And keeping Jaden Daniels in the pocket and keeping him from creating with his feet as well.
Mm-hmm. We have one more Zoom left in the week, and that'll be on Thursday with head coach Clay Helton. But before we wrap it up, Shotgun, any final thoughts?
The one interesting thing that Todd Orlando talked about was the safeties. He talked very highly of the safety group and said they're a very mature group, and it helps that that's going to be the group that is behind everyone else, so they can help get everyone in front of them lined up, from the defensive line to linebackers, because the guys back there, Talanoa Hufanga, who he referenced as Tally, which we kind of liked, good little nickname there, as well as Isaiah Pola-Mao. Those guys have seen a ton of stuff, and they have a ton of experience in the back. They've seen a ton of plays, so they're going to be able to help everyone in front of them out. So we'll see. Keep an eye on them on Saturday to see how much they're communicating pre-snap, to see how well the defense is communicating and how much they're having to try to line everybody else up. If they're not having to do too much, then that's probably a good sign for USC.
Mm-hmm. Good observation there, Shotgun. Alrighty, that's going to wrap it up for USC's Wednesday morning press conference. For Shotgun Spratling, I'm Keely Eure. For more, check out uscfootball.com.